This is Chargers Now. I am your host, Will Ortner, and today we're going to be talking about some potential free agent targets that the Chargers could go after The Athletic released their article on one player that every NFL team could move on from. There's a couple guys that if they do get cut by the teams that they are already on, I do think they would improve the Chargers roster in 2026. Is there a player that you want the Chargers to target in free agency? Let me know down below in the comment section. It can be someone that is already a free agent, or it could be someone that could potentially end up being a free agent. Just make sure that you let me know loud and proud down below in the comment section. The first player that we're going to be talking about in today's video is someone that we've actually already talked a little bit about on the channel, and it is someone that is already a free agent. Of course, wide receiver Tyreek Hill was released on Monday by the Miami Dolphins, and he is easily someone that could come over to the Chargers. Now, whether my opinion on Hill being a good fit for the Chargers or not is kind of a moot point at this point. What is important is to kind of go through how he could help this team. Hill obviously had a lot of success with Mike McDaniel at the previous stop in Miami last year, obviously not going the way that Hill or McDaniel would have wanted, not just for the Dolphins, but for Hill as well, because of the severe injury that he suffered. When you look at the last 4 seasons, though, for Tyreek Hill, it obviously makes a lot of sense that Hill had some success and would be willing to play again for Mike McDaniel. When you look at especially 23 and 22, Tyreek Hill was one of the best, if not the best, wide receivers in the National Football League. Now, to me, when I look at Tyreek Hill, all of the other things aside, it all depends on his injury status. He had one of the worst knee injuries that I have ever seen, one of the worst lower body injuries that I have ever seen, frankly. And for me, if Tyreek Hill is not going to be able to give you with 100% certainty that he is ready to go and play for this squad, I don't know that I really want him. Now, if Mike McDaniel and the Chargers decide to bring him in, then I do believe that that tells you something about where they think that Hill's injury status is going to be at. The next player that I want to dive into and talk about today is a guy by the name of Garrett Bradbury, and he is in a position that we've had the Chargers do a lot of videos around, and someone that we believe here at Chargers Now that could fit into a role that the Chargers clearly need, and that, of course, is at center. Chad Graff of The Athletic had this to say on the center who previously played with the New England Patriots. They could split with wide receiver Stephon Diggs or tight end Hunter Henry, given the lack of guaranteed money remaining on their respective contracts, but wide receiver and tight end are already positions of need for the Pats. So perhaps they move on from Bradbury as they usher in offensive line changes. When I look at a guy like Garrett Bradbury, he is someone who is an instant upgrade on the offensive line because that center position has been poorly played, to say the least. I think that the Chargers are going to go in and grab a big-time center. Now, the question is it going to be Tyler Linderbaum, Connor McGovern, or could it be Garrett Bradbury if he does get moved on from? When you look at the Chargers' offensive line depth chart, Bradley Bozeman has been, well, to be honest with you, frankly, not that good. So it would make sense for the Chargers to move on from him at center and bring in some outside help, especially someone who could come in and be an instant upgrade for this offense. We are going to come up next with the top 3 free agent targets from that Athletic article that I do believe would be easy for the Chargers to come in and grab. There are a couple of different players in positions that we've already talked about, while also one of those players is someone that I do think could be a sneaky player that could add instantly into this defense for the Chargers. Before we get into any of that, though, don't miss any of the great Chargers content that we have coming out here on the channel. Make sure that you come on in and smash that subscribe button. And if you turn on notifications, you'll never miss another video. We got a ton of content coming out your way as the NFL offseason ramps up because, hey, the Combine's going to be here next week. NFL free agency, it's right around the corner. So make sure that you hit that sub button on the channel and you never miss any of the big news. Next Chargers free agent that I think is important for all of us to talk about is someone that I think would be a sneaky, really good signing for the Chargers, and that is Uchenna Nwosu, an outside linebacker with Seattle Seahawks. Now, when you look at Uchenna Nwosu, he might be someone that doesn't necessarily jump off the page to you, but I'll tell you right now that Nwosu is someone that could really come in and add to this defense, especially if a couple of guys don't end up getting re-signed. Seattle has the sixth most cap space entering the off season. This coming to us from the Athletics' Michael-Shawn Dugar, according to Over the Cap. So general manager John Schneider doesn't need to shed a ton of salary to keep his Super Bowl team together. One possibility could be Nwosu, who'd save the team $11.4 million if he's released. He turned 29 in December, had a productive season on the best defense in the league, and basically ended the Super Bowl with a fourth quarter pick six. Now, when you look at this Chargers team, there was a lot of success at that edge rusher position. The problem is that Odafe Oweh and Khalil Mack, their statuses right now for the Chargers is up in the air, both of them being free agents, and Khalil Mack definitely considering retirement. Uchenna Nwosu is someone, if either one of those players or both does not end up back in LA, could instantly add to that edge rusher position and have a lot of success. When you look at his stats in the 2025 season, Nwosu was flying around, had a bunch of tackles, as well as had a ton of sacks for the Seahawks. When you look at his last four seasons, you can tell that when Nwosu is healthy, he is one of the better players in the National Football League. The key for Nwosu is always going to be about keeping him healthy, because I'll tell you right now, when he is healthy, that dude is a fantastic player in this crew. When you look at the edge rusher depth chart right now, you can obviously that Thule is going to be back next season, but when it comes to Oweh and Khalil Mack, there's a lot of worry about whether they will be back or not. And of course, Bud Dupree, well, he just hasn't been that good. I like Nwosu in LA, especially if he's able to stay healthy. He adds in a premier edge rushing talent for the squad. And while he might not be the best against the run, Nwosu clearly is still a player that can come in and help add some strength and some depth to the pass rushing ability of this Chargers team. What position group do you think that the Chargers need to improve upon most? Let me know down below in the comment section. What position group do you want the Chargers to really target in free agency? Next player that we're going to talk about is a player in a position that might not be as sexy as most people think, but I do think that Ezra Cleveland would instantly add to the offensive line crew here in LA. When I look at a guy like Ezra Cleveland, he's been around the block for quite some time. He played in Minnesota while also now playing in Jacksonville recently. He's the type of player that I do think the Chargers could bring in for relatively cheap. And when you look at the interior of the offensive line, Mekhi Becton was not good. Bradley Bozeman was not good. And Zion Johnson was meh. So when I look at a guy like Ezra Cleveland, you're instantly getting an upgrade on that offensive line, but you're also going to be getting a guy like Cleveland at a much lower price. Again, when we look at this offensive line, I got no issues with Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater. I feel pretty damn good about what those two are bringing in. But when I look at that interior, there is a lot to be desired, and I don't think that it's a necessarily great decision to look at some of the backups and say, well, we'll just make them the starters, because I don't know how well I think that Trevor Penning is going to play, or a guy on the other side. When we look at the PFF grades for Ezra Cleveland, obviously he's still pass proing incredibly well as doing well in the run game. Not going to end up costing you a lot in penalties. Ezra Cleveland, easy addition, and he's not going to be all that expensive. Last player that I want to look at is one extra weapon for our QB, Justin Herbert, and that's Michael Pittman Jr., wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. Does feel like the Colts are going to have to make a decision between Pittman or between Alec Pierce. Which one would they rather have in Indianapolis? When you look at Pittman's season, well, it was one of those seasons where, while the production might have gone down ever so slightly, he's still a player that there is a lot of room for him to have success, and still a player that clearly is able to have success in the National Football League. James Boyd of The Athletic had this to say: Pittman totaled a career-high 7 receiving TDs in 2025, but also had just 784 receiving yards, which was his lowest mark since his rookie season in 2020. The veteran wideout who turns 29 in October has a $29 million cap hit in 2026. There is no way Indianapolis will pay him that salary, especially after Alec Pierce supplanted him as the team's number one wide receiver. So as we go now into looking at the stats a little deeper, yes, you're going to see that Michael Pittman, his stats might have taken a slight decrease compared to some of the other years that he's had in Indy. I also think it's important to note that the touchdown success has been very good for Michael Pittman, and he is someone that could instantly add into the red zone offense of this Chargers squad, and I do believe that he is someone who could come up big for the team. I also think it's important to note that, well, it's not like he had the best quarterback play of all time, so I don't think it's that unfair to say that if there weren't the injuries that they had at that QB position in Indianapolis, that he would have still had a year where he was, well, closer to that 800, 900, maybe even 1,000-yard mark. When we look at the wide receiver depth chart in LA, Quentin Johnston, I believe, would be someone that would be supplanted by Michael Pittman. In fact, I believe that he would end up being wide receiver 1 with this squad, or he would end up being wide receiver 2, and he would be kind of the yin to Ladd McConkey's yang, where Ladd would be a little bit smaller, a much better route runner type deal where you can use Michael Pittman as a bigger weapon and as someone who makes bigger plays for this Chargers squad. I think that anytime you can add a great weapon like Michael Pittman Jr., that's only going to lead to success for your team. When I view these free agent potential go and grabs, I do think that the Chargers are setting themselves up for a pretty good squad, and I think that Michael Pittman could be that last addition. Like I said earlier, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss any of the content that we got coming out here on Chargers Now, all around your favorite team. Thank you guys so much for viewing today's video. We always really appreciate it. Make sure that you bolt up.